get out to the field, doing what I love. As long as I'm out here, I don't care where I end up. Big old buck on the ground, about had a heart attack. Can't wait to tell the boys back at the bone shack. Bring it on back to the bone shack. Bring it on back to the bone shack. It's got antlers on the wall, rusty old nails. You can sit and listen to the stories it could tell. Listen about the one that got away with a big old rack. Can't wait to hear the story from the bone shack. Bring it on back to the bone shack. Bring it on back to the bone shack. Bring it on back to the bone shack.
I may have hit him a little far back. Had to take it when I could. He was only 7 yards.
It was getting awful close to dark, with the cam strap rolling, as I headed over to the point of arrow impact to check for blood. An hour or two earlier, from a point across the draw, I found a buck that was looking pretty good considering it was the last weekend of the archery mule deer season. There's a pretty good wind blowing, and time was definitely of the essence, so I left a camera filming on a tripod and headed down the ridge to see how close I could get. After working down the windy ridge as quick as possible, the bench finally came into view. I picked the brush and thistles apart with the binoculars until I found the bucks, and then took the cam strap off and zoomed in on the target. At this point, he's at 90 yards, but in wind like this, I want to be closer to 30. So, to keep the wind in my favor, I dropped over the backside of the ridge and got down on their level. slow going with all the ground cover and the thorny rose bushes, but there was plenty of wind noise to cover up my sound. If the bucks were still there, then I was getting close. That's when I saw movement up ahead, as the 4-point the target was with bedded down in the thistles not more than 30 yards ahead. I worked my way closer, but was stalled when this 2-point walked into the opening at only 25 yards and looked my direction. That's the target buck on the right, as I hang out just out of sight, about 30 yards away in the brush. The 2-point stares me down for about 5 minutes before he finally leaves the scene. Just as the young buck was leaving, the 4-point, who was only 20 yards away, got up and followed behind. The target acted as if he was going to take the same path, so I drew back in anticipation. Perfect. The buck stopped, quartering away at 30 yards. There was only a small window through the vegetation, but I could see right where that arrow needed to go. A bright red, bubbly, bloody arrow confirmed a good hit. I snuck over the edge in hopes of finding him before dark, but all I found was a big, nasty canyon. It'd been raining nearly every night, so I didn't really want to leave until the morning. I hiked back up the ridge where I could find some cell service and called my brother, who wasn't very far away. He was to bring lights and packboards. To pass the time, I pulled off the cam strap and replayed the footage.
Oh yeah. Yes, dude. Yeah, it's
pretty good.
huh?
Tumbled pretty good. Awesome, man.
Here it is, late spring, in the peak of the mule deer fawning season. Perfect time for some predator calling. With the decoy set up and an arrow knocked, I turned on the Fox Pro and let it do its thing. At 8 minutes into the set, a coyote shows up at about 90 yards. He paused for a while and scoped things out, and then came trotting in. Oh yeah, rolled that dog at about 50 yards on the run. After failing to squeeze in a standing still shot, I fired a missile of hope which took him to the ground. Then, off came the cam strap, and I zoomed in to get a few clips of him running through the sage, which confirmed a good arrow angle and lots of blood. I gave it another 10 minutes in hopes of another one coming in, then took off the cam strap and replayed the footage. The arrow didn't penetrate as deeply as I'd have liked, but if you look closely, you can tell that it's heading the right direction and see blood gushing.
There he is, right there.
Well, tracked him down. He's looking pretty tore up. He's up there on the hill behind me. Looking pretty gruesome, so this is probably where we'll sign off.
It's only 9 o'clock on the opening day of the 2012 archery deer season. With an arrow knocked and the cam strap rolling, I'm closing the distance on a very impressive buck. The morning started out right as I found the buck that was on the top of the hit list. Unfortunately though, he was with about 20 other mule deer, so I just waited and watched from a distance, hoping he would give me an opportunity. Instead, he bedded down in some brushy timber where there was very low odds of getting a shot. As the big mule deer disappeared into the shadows, something else down below him grabbed my attention. It was a wide, mature whitetail that I'd never seen before, and definitely a shooter. There was only a slight breeze, but I figured he'd head for deeper cover pretty soon, so I decided to see if I could make something happen. I gathered up my gear and put some thick wool socks on. then took one last look to make sure he was still there. He hadn't moved any, so with the cam strap rolling and my bow in hand, the first stalk of the season began. After only 10 minutes into the stalk, the buck got up and began feeding. I was kinda out in the open, so I got down to keep a low profile, took the cam strap off my head, zoomed in, and continued filming. The buck eventually fed over into the next draw and out of sight, and before I knew it, I was approaching the tree that he was just feeding under. I knew he could be close, so I knocked an arrow and went into stealth mode, trying to be as quiet as possible in this dry, crunchy vegetation. As I came around this tree, a rump and a wide rack disappeared into the brush only 40 yards ahead. I gave the buck a few extra moments to get deeper into the brush, then, with the sound of road construction 2 miles away helping to cover up the noise of my footsteps, I made it through the clearing ahead. As I approached this fence that I didn't want to have to cross, I caught a glimpse of the buck's rack on the other side of the rise, not more than 50 yards away. Now I had to cross the fence, and to make matters worse, it was tight and tall, which caused me to get my crotch stuck on a barb. Then I jabbed my lens with a limb. It was kind of a noisy, ungraceful crossing, but there was plenty of other noise going on, so I hoped that he hadn't heard me. I continued to move forward until I spotted the buck licking himself in the dark shadows only 35 yards ahead. He's well within range, but never did give me a good shot angle. Eventually, he moved off to the right, which gave me a little bit of time to cut off a few more yards. Then he stepped into a black hole at only 30 yards, which was just too good of an opportunity to pass up. Yes, the shot looked, felt, and sounded good. Unfortunately, though, he made it out of sight, so I was going to have to give him some time. After a little recuperation, I went over to the black hole and looked for the arrow. The bloody arrow confirmed a hit, so with time to spare, I grabbed something to eat and replayed the footage. It was a huge disappointment when I realized all that was visible is a flash of white upon arrow impact. Luckily, I got a short clip of him running away for proof. After a good little wait, I got on the blood trail, which led me up out of the canyon and into the clearing on top. The buck turned out to be everything I thought it was, and maybe even bigger. It was only opening day of archery season, and I got to hang my tag on the whitest whitetail I'd ever seen. I got the meat hanging in the shade, and then came back for the last load and stumbled my way back to the pickup.